Hello, my marketing and entrepreneur friends. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Marketing podcast, where I, your host, Katya Allison, get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in this wonderful world of marketing. Now, I'm excited to have you here for today's podcast with Kathy Guzman Galloway. She is the CEO and the head wizard at the Clarity Wizard. With over 20 years in the CPG industry, Kathy really brings a wealth of expertise in strategic brand positioning and in understanding consumer behavior. And in today's episode, Kathy and I talk about creating memorable and engaging experiences for your audience, and those experiences that go beyond what we would classify as traditional. And its role also in shaping how consumers perceive brands. We also talk research and data-driven decisions that have helped brands like Lay's and Nature Made truly connect with their audiences, not just understands them. Both are equally as important. And you know, I'm all about actionable insights, and Kathy really hits a home run as she shares her brand framework and other practical insights like how to conduct effective and budget-friendly research that gives you the intel that you're looking for about what your customers really want. From clear brand identity to purpose and guiding your marketing strategies, there is a little something for everyone in this episode. Kathy's advice is really geared to help you not just survive, but thrive in the ever-evolving world of marketing. So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into it. Let's talk marketing. Kathy, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. I'm excited to have you on here so that we can dive into branding.
Yes, I'm excited too. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we do get started, let's have our listeners get to know you a little bit. We'll start off with our standard questions. And the first one is, what is or what was your first marketing role? Whether marketing was in the title or whether you view it as marketing. What was your first marketing role?
I love that you asked this question, by the way. For me, that was at Frito-Lay, which is part of the PepsiCo ecosystem.
Yes.
I was right out of business school, and I was working on the baked Lay's business, which, coming from my background and my family and my life and the types of jobs I saw people in my circle working, I thought I had the greatest job on earth. I was like, this is the best thing that could ever happen to anyone. I'm here talking about marketing and innovation. I'm doing research. There's all these really smart people. By the way, they're paying me like $80,000. I am like the richest person on the planet.
Yes.
This was pre-kids, pre-daycare costs.
Of course.
I was just like, I was over the moon. It was just the greatest thing anyone could have offered me at that time. I was totally in love with it. So that was my first role, and it was fantastic. And all the time I spent with PepsiCo has proven to be well worth the extremely hard work that it is to work in an ecosystem like PepsiCo that is really driven by data and results and sales numbers, and has an uber focus on the last mile, that 5% of what we do that shows up on the shelf and is responsible for 80 to 90% of what the results are. There was just such a commitment and a focus to that. So a lot of what I still do and I still talk about is from a very strong foundation that I got through PepsiCo. So I was glad for the time to be over, to be honest, but I have always been grateful for it. It was definitely well worth the time invested.
I always feel like there's your formal studies where you go to a specific college or university and you get your degree, but there is nothing like working it, like boots on the ground, that it is the epitome of street smarts. I feel like once you get into a job, it's all of a sudden those things that you read, they mean something a little bit different, like you interpret them a little different. You realize that that was just like the beginning of the paragraph. That wasn't even the full story, which I always think is fascinating. And it's so great that you were in a place where you can really absorb so much. There's so many learnings in that particular industry and for that particular company. Absolutely. Now that's where you were. Yeah. Where are you now? What are you currently doing?
So I'm currently the CEO and head wizard at the Clarity Wizard. And at the Clarity Wizard, we help brands, particularly CPG brands, consumer packaged goods is really my
Hmm.
area of focus. We help CPG brands with brand positioning optimization, which helps them to
Perfect.
maximize revenue and minimize risk with all of the work that we do. So we've got a great team of people that are here supporting our clients, and we do really everything we can to help our clients optimize what it is that they're selling, who they're selling it to, and why those people should care, which is the foundation for any strong business. So we've been doing this, or I should say, I've been doing this consulting for about 12 years now. And the
Okay.
Clarity Wizard is about a year old. It's sort of a bit of a rebrand from my original business when I just started to come to the conclusion, and I should say, really, other people were coming to the conclusion before I was, which is usually how it happens, that this is certainly where my zone of genius was, and what was missing in the marketplace was somebody to really just focus on that and do it
Yeah.
at a level of excellence that you're just not seeing in the way that a lot of folks are doing brand positioning today. So yeah,
Yeah.
the Clarity Wizard.
What is it about what you do that you love? But I think everything has a good and bad. So as soon as you tell me what you love about it, I also want to know what you would pluck out of it if you could pluck anything out to make it even better. So
Yeah.
let's start with the positive. What do you love about what you currently do?
My absolutely favorite part about marketing in general, that this career and certainly the path I've pushed myself into, and this
Yeah.
company that I have now, all follow the consumer. And at the end of the day, everything comes back to some connection with an individual person. You know, the world of CPG, consumer packaged goods, again, is so broad and so big that any individual person is touching 10, 15, 20 CPG products over the course of the day. You wake up
Yeah.
and you're brushing your teeth, you're putting lotion on your face, you are making yourself some breakfast, you're packing your lunch, you're interacting at work, maybe you're having an energy drink or a beverage, and that continues on through the entire day. And so the idea that these products are showing up in the world in a way that is helping people be better at whatever it is that they're doing, and it's meeting their
Yeah.
needs on any scale, because there's so many scales, right, depending on the consumer. I absolutely love that, and that has always been true in the work I've done, but even more so with brand positioning, it's that uber focus on the consumer. And what I would pluck, gosh, if you can figure out how to take this out for me, I would pay you for real.
I'll
And
take
that
some
is,
notes.
take some notes. And that is, I would love to never write a report again. That would be great. It would be
You don't
fantastic.
love it?
I really don't. And, I think that what's hard about for me for reports is a lot of the work that we do centers around consumer research and insights gathering.
Yeah.
And the way that I do research and the way that I like to build insights is very much in the moment, in a very immersive way. We're here, we're all talking together. And there's just something lost between that active experience, being in front of a consumer, and then translating that to paper, even if that includes video clips and summaries. There's just something lost there, and I just find it to be tedious. But I'll tell you some secrets. Is I think AI is starting to help
Oh,
me
yeah.
think how that works. And I've got some folks on my team that are really good at report writing, so that's helpful.
I am a big believer in leveraging AI to help you work a lot more efficiently in those kinds of areas. I also think like when you go back, and especially like in the podcast, like I'll go back and I'll take a look at the transcript. I think you're right in one vein where when you're in front of a consumer, there's an energy. There's like almost a physical energy that you can't translate to paper,
Mm,
right? You can write someone emphatically, but when you feel they emphatically love something, two totally different things, and that doesn't
absolutely.
translate. But what I think that you get out of like taking a look at like a transcript of something is sometimes you see it in bare bones, which that always I feel like surfaces up some really good insights. But I'm also with you in regards to reporting as well too. That could be the tedious part. The fun part about marketing is the creative part for sure. Uh,
Absolutely.
I think you have to be creative. You have to stay innovative as well. So I'm curious, how do you stay up to date on the trends?
Uh, for me, it's about being in the work.
Okay.
One of the things I love about being a consultant that I've loved since day one is that no 2 hours are the same at all.
Yeah.
At this point, I've worked on over 30 product categories. So on any given day, I can be talking about iced tea, and then I'm talking about applesauce, and then I'm talking about macaroni and cheese, and then I'm talking about crackers, and then I'm talking about potato chips, and then, a beauty cream. And there's so much about them that is incredibly different, and yet
Yeah.
there's a thread that always remains constant, so that it's easy for me to move from place to place. But each time I'm in one of these pockets, I'm learning so much about the way that someone who is shopping for body lotion is thinking about what is important to me when I buy body lotion. And that same person then turning 2, 3 aisles down and trying to decide what kind of hairbrush should I pick up? And what are the
Hmm.
things that are going to remain static between them? And what are the things that are completely different? And so every single brand, every single project, every single category, and even every product within a category or a brand brings something new to the table in your understanding of how consumers make decisions, how they buy products, how they engage with brands, what does it mean to have an emotional connection. And so really the work is what drives a lot of that, again, because so much of my work is research based. So it
Yeah.
naturally opens me up to that. But then on top of that, I love being a consumer, actually. I love
Same.
grocery shopping is one of my favorite things. I like to see what's new in the aisles. I like to take pictures of products and brands and, what new random celebrity is launching something they have no business launching and how that compares to something else. So I think it's a little bit of that. In other words, I basically live it all day. It's either I'm
Yeah.
working it or my personal life is part of it. So I just like to absorb as much of it as I can anywhere that I am.
I love that. And I also really love you going down the aisles and taking pictures. I feel like that's also the same thing that I do by subscribing to email newsletters or following different brands on social media, right? Like you are sitting and living in an area where you're finding inspiration that you are really going to take to your every single day and see how it navigates. I also think, like, for you specifically, it's got to be really interesting, like walking down those aisles or living and breathing it and then translating that to the digital world, right? Because I feel like everything is so digitally connected, to see, how something that maybe is on the end cap, like, how did it get driven to the end cap? Was it a digital campaign that then leveraged it to be on the end cap? What always comes to mind, and I don't know why, but it's Everyman Jack at
Mm.
Target that's sitting on the end cap after I've seen multiple things on social media. Like, I don't know if I'm seeing it on social media because I went to the end cap or vice versa. It's always really interesting to see those just kind of connections, which I
Yes,
think is a good.
true.
You, I'm sorry.
No, no,
I
no,
was gonna
finish.
no, I was just going to say, I think it's a good segue for branding and brand positioning. And I wanted to ask you, this may sound like such an elementary question, but what is the difference between just branding and brand positioning?
That's a fantastic question that I don't get asked enough. So thank you for asking it. Because it does feel a lot of the time like it is used interchangeably, and it most certainly
Yeah.
is not. When I talk brand positioning, and in general, when you talk when we all talk brand positioning, what we should be talking about is really a strategic conversation. It has nothing to do with look and feel or tone or voice. And that's a lot of what branding is. Branding comes out of brand positioning, as it should
Hmm.
come out of brand positioning. A lot of times, particularly for startups, they're starting through branding because it's the
Hmm.
easiest thing to kind of wrap your head around, right? I have a voice, I
Absolutely.
have a perspective, a point of view of what this thing should look like. And so that feels naturally easy to do. But in reality, what happens when branding leads is that there comes a point in time in the short term, midterm, long term when we have not thought through the details of brand positioning and we realize there are gaps or mismatches. And so what brand positioning does is say, before we do anything, and branding and design work is for startups in particular one of the most expensive things, the thing you're going to spend the most money on up
Yeah.
front, as you should. It's extremely important. But without that foundation up front, you're just increasing risk in terms of what you're going to get out. And brand positioning, what it does is tell us, who am I serving? What am I serving? And why should they care? And that sets the stage for what leads into branding. I think we're going to talk a little bit about my framework in a second here, but to
Yeah.
kind of tee that up, part of the reason for the framework, and why I developed it, is that I found that, particularly with startups, but it's true for most brands, that there's just so much to say. I want to talk about how I've
Yeah.
only 5 grams of sugar, but also we source from directly from Africa, the farms in Africa, and also it's woman owned. And by the way, we've got the best price in the market, and also our packaging is recyclable, and also, Mhm. It is
All
literally,
the things.
yes,
All the
exactly.
things.
It's literally what I call the and also problem, is that there's just so much to say. And so when you get to positioning, which is a very specific and clear group of definitions, you'll find yourself trying to squeeze everything in. Like, I got to talk about all this stuff. This is what makes my brand. But actually that creates inefficiency, because what the work of brand positioning is to be very clear about what is it that a consumer should connect with, and why are we able to demand a change in behavior. And this is true even beyond CPG. I think that's the beauty about brand positioning, is it doesn't even matter what industry category you're in, or even if it's B2B. The person that I am wanting to do something, pick up the phone, buy the package, make the click, whatever that is, I need to provide a compelling story and reason why they should do that behavior I'm asking them to do. And in that moment of a decision making, and in my world, that's typically the shelf, or in ecom, that
Yeah.
virtual shelf. I don't care about all of the extras. What I care about is I'm craving chocolate covered pretzels. Like that's all I really care about right now. Like, is it gonna taste good? Is it crunchy? Like, is it chocolate delicious? Is it dark, or is it milk? Like, that's what I care
Yeah.
about right now. There are other pieces of the brand that will fill in the holes of that
Yeah.
functional experience. And so I do also want to tell them, by the way, it is woman owned. We do source from fill in the blank. It is dark chocolate that was got from, the Andes Mountains. Yes, some of that is important, but it's got a time and a place. And what my framework does is say, let's take all of the things you want to say and give them a place and a reason to be. So the framework takes brand purpose, which is why are even bothering to do any of this wild and crazy work that we do. The brand mission, which is literally what are we doing that is measurable. The brand positioning, which is about the product and the product experience, and in that way is really a tool that allows us to live into the mission, right? The fact that I sell these cookies, I'm only doing because I'm on a mission to get people to rediscover the smallness of an indulgent on a day-to-day basis, right? That's my mission. The tool is the cookie. It also then leads to brand values. Brand values are the ways that we behave in the world. How do we hire people? How do we think about the kinds of partners that we work with? How do we choose between retail partners that we believe in what they do or don't do? How do we even celebrate, I don't know, the holidays in our organization, right? Those are our values. The very last thing then becomes brand identity, which is what branding is. And brand identity is how we talk and how we look that represents all of the other parts, right? That brand identity is the face of all of the other things that the brand brings to the table. And so while branding is important, it's one piece and it's an output of all of this other stuff. I hope that
And I
helps.
think That totally helps. I love it. There are a bunch of sound bites that I'm going to most definitely take from that. And I think you already dove into your fundamentals framework. So if
Mhm.
you could back that up and give it to me in bullet points, brand purpose was one, brand identity, I got the fifth one, second, third,
Yes.
and fourth.
Yeah, so
So brand
first of it
purpose.
is brand purpose. That leads the brand purpose, which is the why, brand mission, which is the what, the
Okay.
brand positioning, which is your product or your service. That's the how you actually do this, and then brand values, which is how we behave, and then identity, how we look and how we sound, and all those pieces
Okay.
put together to create the fundamentals for everything else that happens in this business, literally.
So that's perfect. All of those make sense to me. And if I'm listening, I'm hearing, okay, that's great. Kathy, I've got all these pieces, I've written them down. What does that look like bringing that to life? What does
Mm.
that mean bringing it to life? How do I present all of those in one thing? Is it an ad? Is it like, you know, the content that I'm creating? How do I bring all of those pieces and bring them to life and have that be my brand?
Yeah, that's a good question. So think of, I would encourage people to think of those brand fundamentals similarly to how we think about on the branding side, there are brand guidelines. On the strategy side, there's typically a strategic plan, an operating plan. That's
Yeah.
a little bit like what brand fundamentals are. It's sort of the guiding vision for what this brand does, says, and stands for in the marketplace. And my guidance to my clients consistently is literally everything you do, every initiative that you are starting begins with brand guidelines, with brand fundamentals. We should not
Yeah.
be starting a conversation on innovation, on a new marketing campaign, even on reorganizing our departments without
Yeah.
first coming back to let's revisit our brand fundamentals and make sure that we understand what it is we're ultimately trying to do here. And in that way, they will always live consistently throughout the life of the organization and are really sort of a starting point for what the culture even looks like, right? That we are all
Yeah.
on the same page about this thing that we are trying to accomplish. And that is how brand guidelines on identity are used, right? That we use them
Yeah.
religiously. If you're going to create any advertising, you're going to go right to the guidelines. Same idea, except it's everything business strategy, literally top to bottom,
Okay.
everything business strategy.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's say we are launching a new product. So we've developed a new product. We feel really great about that. It's time to go figure out a manufacturing solution.
Okay.
What a great time and opportunity to say to the RFP vendors, manufacturers, co-manufacturers typically, let's talk about what this company stands for and what it means and what we're trying to accomplish. And let's make sure that our vision, our values, and our focus is aligned. That you understand that if our purpose is, for example, let's say our mission is a little more tangible in nature, our mission is to help people understand that there is indulgence in every day and that it's worth indulging, right? We live in a culture that is all weight loss and Ozempic and so many things, but there's power and value in indulgence. And that's
Yes.
important to us as an organization. And that you see that in our brand of, let's call it cookies and cakes and ice creams. That's a conversation to have with a co-packer. And the reason to have that conversation with them is one, so they need to understand the reason you ask for what you ask for. Like when we're telling you we need 80% cocoa, this is why, right? Because this is important to
Yeah.
us. But also, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years in time, the manufacturer is optimizing their line and they decide to make their own little tweaks and changes, as unfortunately they do. These are
Yeah.
things we can hold them to. We are not okay with your substandard efforts in fill in the blank. That is not something that we're willing to stand for. And that's the same way that I would use that for any important decision that we're making in the company. As time passes, it should be so easy to say, hey, let's quickly look at these fundamentals. Are we on the same page? Good, great, because we've been doing this 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Where it gets tricky is we forget about them. We did them, we thought about them, that was good. All of a sudden, someone in sales is like, hey, it would be fantastic if we did a chocolate cookie that has, I don't know, sucralose in it. Time,
Yeah.
time. That's not what we do. That's not part of our business.
Yeah.
That's not who we are. And so maintaining that consistency from day one is the most helpful way to maintain the consistency rather than having to fight
Yeah.
the battle later. Yeah.
The way that you describe it, I almost feel like you're describing um, that brand positioning as the DNA of your brand, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't fundamentally go, backwards from it, which then is going to make my next question seem a little strange, right? So, well, I don't know how it'll seem. Let me throw it at you. So I think as if you are a brand that has existed for a really long time, and now we're existing in a world where we are a lot more diverse and much more focused on DE&I, all sorts of things, right? I have worked for companies where all of a sudden there's this, okay, well, we have to show diversity, right? Where it's not that it wasn't part of their DNA, but it just wasn't at the forefront that they were leading it, right? And no offense to any of the brands, but now there is such a spotlight on diversity. So if branding and brand positioning is how you should be living and breathing and moving forward, how do you advise a brand who now wants to be more strategic when it comes to diversity and really focus on that as well too? Do we have room to grow into that as well?
Yeah, I think there are two pieces to that puzzle. There is, on the one hand, an organization who's interested in adopting those types of values as an
Mm-hmm.
entity. And then separately, there are brands who feel like there are opportunities to be had. And those are two different questions, right? If you feel like the market you serve is increasingly more diverse, but your brand is not connecting with those consumers, this is a very simple consumer question like any other consumer question. And it starts by understanding the audience. So that audience
Yeah.
might be African American males in the South, or that audience might be new moms of kids
Yeah.
under 6 months old, right? In both of those scenarios, that is a challenge of understanding your audience. Now, how you understand them might vary because connecting with African American males in the South requires an authentic approach to connect with
Yes.
them. And that has its rules of how to develop that and
Engage.
operate it.
Yeah.
But the advice I would give down that path is to put your marketing hat on very
Yeah.
clearly. I need to understand this audience. What's the right way to understand them? And then how do I develop solutions that will attract them? Whether that is messaging or actually product solutions, you will determine through your research. And having that commitment to research will actually solve this problem for you. Because if you have gone years into your business and are only now saying, oh, hold on, I need to pay attention to this, you've lost the
Yeah.
ball this whole time, right?
Yeah.
This country has been diverse from day one. If you weren't talking about this 20 years ago, you were super late to the game. Like, we got to just
Yeah.
know our audience. The other side of the coin, though, which is not an area of expertise for me, but one that is a passion point for me, is about an organization
Hmm.
wanting to increase diversity because they think it's the right thing to do. And I don't
Yes.
mean increase necessarily employees, like maybe you need more diverse employees or maybe you don't, but more through the lens of, as an organization, we think it's important to serve everyone in our broad community, right? That's a matter of a value. The solution is the same, but it has a different point of view. If the task at hand is, as an organization, as an entity, we take a gigantic company, like let's pick on PepsiCo, and they're like,
Yeah.
hey, we're just not doing enough for multicultural consumers. And we think this is a gap in the marketplace. They're going to approach it the same way. We got to go understand them. We need to know who they are. We need to know what they need. We need to know what they want. It's just that the solutions may come to life in a very, very different ways, right? Maybe it's about new brands. Maybe it's about acquiring something. Maybe it's just about investing locally. But
Yeah.
the tactic is the same. Go understand the audience. So it's asking yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Is this about values or is this about business opportunity? And then two is go and learn about these people, whoever it is you're trying to learn about them authentically in a way that is respectful of them and what makes them unique, and then figure out what you do with that information in order to take action on it.
I love that. Those are such actionable insights to walk away with from this. If I am also just kind of a newer brand, new-ish, right? Let's say I've been around for at least like 5 years, and now I'm listening to this and I'm like, ooh, I need to gain a little bit more clarity on my brand positionings. Because as I'm listening to like the five fundamental framework, right? I'm thinking, do I have the answers to all of those things? So, what's your advice for a brand who wants to gain a little bit more clarity on brand positioning? I know that you've advocated for research, but is that my only way into that?
Yes, I think so. I shouldn't say the only way, but the easiest way to get a read is research. But I don't want the folks listening to think, oh my God, I got to go find $150,000 to go do research.
I know that. I
That's
think that's why
definitely
I'm
not it.
asking it too,
Uh
right?
huh.
Like because I love research, but man, research is really expensive and it is also very time consuming, as it should be, because you're trying to get to the nitty gritty of like understanding and filling in all of those gaps so that you can make better business decisions. But what else?
Yeah, and actually, I think that is a fault of our industry, that
Mhm.
we have created this scenario in which we think that's the only way to do it, because honestly that's what's always been offered up is, okay, call one of these big research companies and you're lucky if
Yeah.
you're going to get a proposal for less than $50,000. But the reality is that we don't think of some things as research that actually are research. So every
Okay.
single time someone buys your product, you have an audience with which to do research. So I say
Mhm.
a lot to new starting brands is you can do research for free. There are many ways to do that. I'll ramble off a few. Number one, if you're selling a product at any retail place, go to that retail place and just hover, stand around, wait for people to show up to that aisle and ask them questions. Why did you pick that up? I see you're with your daughter. Is this for her? Is this for you? Why didn't you buy this one? What is it about this that you like? Another easy one is any brand that is doing D2C. If you're selling anything online, you're
Mhm.
able to get in touch with those consumers, right? Find
Yep.
5 people who have bought your brand in the last 3 months. They're brand new. Why did you buy this? What were you looking for? How did you discover us? Find 5 more people that have been buying your brand for whatever extended period of time, a year, 3 years, 10 years. Why are you still buying this? What else have you tried and still made your way back to us? And then find 5 people who bought once and never came back. Why didn't you come back? What did you go find? And what did you find there that was better than we were offering? Costs no money at all, but
Yeah.
courage to pick up the phone and maybe hear
Yeah.
some feedback. And then the last one I would say is there are actually a number of tools available these days. In the last, really since the pandemic, there have been so many of these online DIY platforms for doing quick, simple research to answer questions. I will say that the hardest part about research is not actually the methodology or the tactic that you use. And there are tactics from $0 to $1 million and all in
Yeah.
between. If you've got $2,000, if you've got $500, there's research to be done. The hardest part about research is designing it in a way that gives you not confirmation of what you think you know, but really clarity on a topic that you have a hypothesis on, but you may be right or wrong about. And so, spending the time to be clear about what the questions are and asking good questions that are not biased
Yeah.
is ultimately the most important part of doing that research, no matter how much money it costs you.
One of the things that I really want to point out that you said is, find five here, and five here, which really leads me to believe that, and I want people to hear this because oftentimes if I'm advocating for research, what I always go up against is like, well, we need 2,000 people to say the same thing. But it does reach a point where you can actually identify some sort of consensus, and a small number doesn't mean that it's not valid information at all, as long as your questions, like you said, are on point and are meant to be strategically in place to give you the information that it is that you're looking for. But I don't know if you have
Mhm.
additional thoughts in
Yeah,
regards to quantity over quality.
absolutely. And there's actually a place and a time for both of those. And both are necessary in that qualitative, which is very small sample size, you can really get into a conversation with someone, is a lot about the why. Why are you doing this? Why have you made these choices? Quantitative is about what they're doing. 80% of people are buying this because it's low fat, right?
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for that. But what I find is that the biggest challenges that brands have is actually on the why. It's not so much on
Mm,
the what, because in reality, if you use the power of Google, even ChatGPT these days, or any of these
yeah.
generative AI tools, there's a lot of stats out there. Like, stats are not the problem. As a matter of fact, you can stand in front of a shelf and you can pretty quickly figure out, well, 6 out of 10 of these brands are talking about, I don't know, low sugar. Obviously, low sugar is important, but why?
Yeah.
Why is low sugar important, and who is it that cares about low sugar? But even in still, I will say, it is possible to do quantitative research at a lower cost. It does not have to be $50,000. And I'm happy to connect with anyone who's thinking about that, and give you some resources and tools you can use to
Yeah.
create some quantitative study that you can run yourself if you need to. And again, under 5K, it is possible to get quantitative data. So I would not run from it. Research and strategy are like those two words that businesses hate to hear. If you hear research or strategy, it means lots of money. That is not true. That is false. So don't
Well,
run away.
I think it's also because everyone is so, I don't know, everyone's budget is tight and they're looking for every dollar to have a return on investment. And
Absolutely.
when it comes to identifying like your why, your purpose, or narrowing down your brand positioning, or getting it that fine tuned, it's really tough to articulate that return on investment, right? It's hard for executive leadership, in my opinion, to be able to see that. As a marketer, I feel like that's always the challenge of like, this is worth it. I know it feels like we're slowing down, but it's that old adage, right? Sometimes you have to slow down to be able to speed up, and that
Absolutely.
gets you a lot further. Now, do you see any sort of emerging trends that could affect consumer experiences moving forward, and just kind of market dynamics that stand out to you?
Yeah, you consumer the experience of the consumer themselves in the category, in the world that they operate
Yeah.
in. Yeah, I think what has been happening for a little while, and maybe changing, is we've gone through a period, and this is especially true in CPG, but true in a lot of categories, where we've gone through a period of time where there have been so many startups, a lot of people founding their own brands and creating their own solutions because they're not seeing themselves reflected in the marketplace, which has been fantastic. But we went through sort of a groundswell of that happening. And as a result, consumers just had more and more choice, more and more options, which is exactly what we want. We want to get the exact thing that's right for me because we each have such unique preferences. But between the pandemic and retailers and manufacturers trying to narrow this pool down is kind of getting a little out of control. What's happening is that the choices are reducing for consumers. I think the trend that I see starting to happen is that
Yeah.
the startup uh, wave has
Hmm.
forced organizations to be smarter about how they serve their audiences. And so what's
Mm,
happening in that trend is more specific language, more specific solutions, options that seem to deliver to a particular kind of consumer, but actually has much broader appeal once you
yeah.
position it in a certain way. And so what I think that ultimately will do is, yes, products will be reduced. There'll be fewer of them, but it'll be a lot less of what I call like generic products. I think in like the 90s and early 2000s, it was just a world of generic products. Everybody's sort of offering a lot of the same. And we're just not in that place anymore, which can be confusing and it can be overwhelming for
Yeah.
a consumer. But in the end, it results, I think, in much better both communication and market solutions that consumers will be happy to pay for. Which is all we want is something that I love. I want to buy something that I can love. I really do, right?
Yeah.
And we're getting there.
Well, and as a consumer, we have that option. Like, I
Mm,
don't have to purchase that because I know something else that's going to hit the XYZ that I'm looking for, and that's what I'm looking for. I
yeah.
think I actually find that myself as a consumer. Like, I will, this is a really bad example, but I'm going to use it anyways. But if I'm looking for a particular sunscreen from a particular brand, right? Like, is it the brands that I'm looking for? No, it's a specific coverage, and I know that not I tan very easily. I'm Latina, so like the sun loves me. So I need that 50. Right. I need that 50, but I also get really hot and I need to make sure that it's sports proof or whatever. Right.
Mhm.
And I like it to be in a spray can. Like, there are all of these things that I know that I'm looking for, that I know that I'm going to find it, even if it's not on the end cap. I don't want to spray it. I don't want to like squeeze it. I need this specific spray. I need it also to come in a 2-pack because I got lots of people in my house. So I don't want to purchase one. So I know I can be particular because what I want is out there as a consumer.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. Is that the reason you know that is because you've recently the last 5 years have been trained that
Yeah,
there are 8,000
absolutely.
sunscreens. Like if it's
Absolutely.
not
I
in
can
the
be
store,
particular.
yes,
Yeah.
if it's not there at the store, just go right onto your phone. In like 3 seconds, you'll have an array of sunscreen options, right? And that's where bigger brands that are better funded are realizing, hey, they have all these different types of packaging. You can squeeze it, you can spray it, it can be aerosol, it cannot be aerosol. But what we're noticing is people want the convenience. They don't want it on their hands. They don't want this, they don't want that. And we're starting to kind of come around to um, offerings that are just better, period. They're just better. And that's exactly why, because it's someone like you, which is great.
I
Thanks for
love
your
it. So
contribution.
everyone go purchase sunscreen.
Right.
Protect yourself from UV rays. You have dropped so many knowledge bombs, which I'm super appreciative of. I have one final question for you to wrap everything up, and that is, if you knew then what you know now, what is the marketing or non-marketing advice that you give to yourself?
That, and I would like to give it to everyone now that I feel like I've learned it, which is um, it's actually not that complicated. It feels really complicated because it's a lot of work, but that doesn't make it complicated. It is so much like having a relationship with anyone in your life. How can
Yeah,
I help you? How can I be there for you? How do I get to know you better so that I can be a better wife, a better mom, a better daughter, a better friend, a better marketer, a better employee? It really is, that is truly what marketing is at the end of the day. And I think it took me a long time to get that because we don't talk about it that way in the corporate world.
yeah,
Where I really started to like put those dots together is when I started to engage with a lot more startups and working with them, educating them, coaching and mentoring them, and feeling like, man, they really have something here. And what they have is a personal commitment and connection to some solution, whatever the solution is they're making. They're personally
yeah,
invested in that. And that's it. That's really it. The rest of it sort of falls into place. It's work, it's a lot of work, but it's not
yeah.
that hard. It's not that complicated. So I wish I had known that when I was living my days in PepsiCo and stressing out about, I don't know, IRCs or coupons or whatever I was stressed about.
Listen, I think that's the best way to wrap it up. It's not that hard. It's not that complicated. Don't overthink it. We can all
No.
do it. Well, I have to say thank you so much for coming on here. And like I said, sharing your knowledge bombs, your drops of wisdom. This has been absolutely a delight.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love that conversation. You're a great host, so I hope everyone's listening
Oh,
and
thank
enjoying.
you. Leave
Appreciate
a review.
exactly.
Thank you so much.
I told you today's episode was a good one. I know that you guys walked away with a lot of those juicy knowledge bombs and actionable insights. Here are my key takeaways of today's episode. Number one, brand positioning is purpose, its mission, its values, its impact. It's the whole kit and caboodle. Now, brand positioning is just kind of like this foundation of a strong building in marketing. It's not just about how things look, but about defining who we serve, what makes us special, and why customers should even really care about us. It's the reason why someone might switch from a competitor to us. It is that compelling. Now, before we even start designing logos or writing taglines, we need to get this right. It guides everything we do, from how we talk to our audience to the products that we create. Now, research is key here, and we really dove into that in this episode. But even if we're on a budget, understanding our customers helps us shape strategies and really hit the mark. When we nail our positioning, it's not only about improving our messaging, but it's also about driving innovation and solutions that our customers are willing to pay for. It's about creating connection and setting ourselves up for really just kind of that long-term success in the market. Brand positioning. You cannot fall asleep on this. Key takeaway number two. I already kind of touched on this with my first key takeaway, but it's research. Research is really that backbone to solid brand positioning. Now, from my experience, leveraging both qualitative and quantitative research methodologies is really key here. So, qualitative methods, oh my goodness, we're going to keep that one in because you guys don't know this, but I've recorded this 20 million different times, and it turns out I'm just having one of those days. So, what do I want to tell you about qualitative methods? Qualitative methods such as like those in-depth interviews and focus groups with small sample sizes, that it's not the numbers part, it's the other side, right? It's what people are saying. Those provide rich insights into consumer behaviors and experiences. It's the why behind their decisions. Meanwhile, quantitative research, those are the numbers, offer those statistical validation and kind of broader consumer trends that essentially also help you make strategic decisions. You need both of them. Her suggestion of kind of using this DIY online platforms is cost effective. But those research methods really resonate with me because you don't always have all of the money, or I should say, you don't always have that big budget to be able to dive into research and have someone like completely own it and take a look at it and all of that stuff. But we did talk about really maximizing your research budget. So it's about gathering those actionable insights that refined your brand strategies without all of the unnecessary costs. The focus on crafting the research questions that drive clarity rather than just confirming your existing beliefs is really spot on. You're not looking for confirmation bias here. You're looking for like genuine information. It's about asking the right questions to uncover just kind of the genuine consumer needs and motivations, steering your brand away from assumptions. Ultimately, integrating research practices into brand positioning enhances marketing effectiveness. And it's also really a way to build consumer trust and loyalty. It helps you really, quote unquote, get your audience. I also want to add that there are, I don't want to call them sneaky ways, but I'll say sneaky ways to get intel that you're looking for. Let's say you are running a webinar, for example, and this is more B2B. It's obviously not consumer, but research is important whether you are B2B or you're going direct to consumer, right? But let's say, you bring people on for a virtual event, post-event surveys, you can craft those questions so you get better insight about your customer, not just how well something did. You can do this at events as well too. There are ways to craft questions so you get a ton of information, and you don't need 100 questions to do that. At a certain point, it becomes a little exhaustive, and there's only so much information you can like pull away from that's incredibly meaningful. So I just wanted to throw in like my 2 cents on the research as well. Now, my final key takeaway is adapt to marketing dynamics to stay relevant. Now, we didn't dive too deep into this, but it still ranks as a top key takeaway for me because of its importance. The importance of regularly updating your brand positioning to match the evolving marketing dynamics. It's important for brands to stay in tune with changes in consumer behavior and market trends. That means revisiting your brand's core principles before diving into a new initiative, especially a new initiative that's going to cost a ton of money. But whether that's launching a product or running a campaign or restructuring our strategies internally, we have to be able to revisit our core principles. Now, integrating brand positioning into all aspects of our business strategy is also key. It's not just for the marketing team, folks. By constantly checking in on how well our brand resonates with our audience, we ensure that our efforts remain relevant and effective. This kind of proactive approach not only reduces the risk of disconnect, but also maintains a consistent brand identity that customers trust. Kathy also brought up this trend towards a more personalized marketing solution, which really highlights the need to stay ahead of the curve. Consumers have options. You know this. I know this. We all know this. So it's important for brands to stand out by delivering exactly what the consumer needs. This reinforces the idea that our brand positioning should be adaptable, ready to adjust to meet these changing consumer expectations. Now, to sum it up, being flexible with our brand positioning isn't just a good strategy. It's essential for staying competitive. By continuously refining how you position your brand without losing your values, you will be better positioned to navigate shifts in the market, seize new opportunities, and build stronger connections with our audience. Make yourself sticky. Now, what did you take away from today's episode? I want to hear it. Post it on the Let's Talk Marketing LinkedIn page or YouTube channel. Leave it in a review on Apple. Slide into my DMs. Let's keep this conversation going. A special thank you to my podcast editor, Johnny Ike. Thanks to you for spending time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya signing off.